Welcome back to Systems of Scale. I'm Ian Gatsky. Today, I'm joined by Zach Price. As the founder of Impulse to Impact, he helps ADHD entrepreneurs and operators scale their businesses by aligning with how their brains actually work, not by forcing themselves into systems that were never designed for them. Zach's background spans sales, leadership, and coaching, but what makes his work especially unique is how he connects execution to identity, self-trust, and internal constraints. In our conversation, we talk about why productivity systems break when your identity is shaky, how to relate to failure without letting it define you, and why so many founders end up building businesses they secretly resent. If you're new here and you get value from this conversation, hit subscribe and share it with a friend. And now here is my conversation with Zach Price. Zach, thanks so much for being here, man.
Happy to be here. I'm excited.
Love it. So a lot of founders, when they feel like they're coming up short, try to fix themselves at the behavior level. And a lot of your content talks about identity shifts rather than a new habit, a new routine, a new system. And I've learned from personal experience that when execution feels broken, like when I just am failing to just get the things done, get the shit done that I say that I'm going to get done, it's usually pointing at something much deeper than just my lack of discipline. So from your experience with working with ADHD founders and founders in general and living this out yourself, how does identity shape execution more than any productivity system ever could?
You might think it's weird for someone in the ADHD space to say, but like I really don't put a lot of emphasis on systems. They break pretty easily. So systems are a lot better than like brute force, like discipline, willpower, those things. But ultimately, like systems will fail, right? I kind of like to build what I teach people around on like when you are at your worst, right? When you're at your emotional kind of worst, and every founder knows what that feels like. How are you going to function? What are you going to go to? Like, what do you think about? And there's a lot of people who teach on kind of this model, but what I would talk about is kind of concentric circles, right? And on the outside, you've got like behavior, what other people will see from the outside, your systems, the things you use. And then as you work in, it's going to be much more internal, right? And so you're going to see, depending on the model you're looking at, but you'll see things like, you know, your core beliefs and who you are as a person. And so I just believe that when you do work at that level, then when things break, then when the person goes off the tracks, you will always revert back to how you see yourself. Just like if I was in the quit smoking world, I would work on getting people to see themselves as non-smokers and not like judge themselves when they smoked, right? I think where ADHD can be really brutal is you fail, like in business, you fail and then it's the stories you tell about yourself, right? And so you actually like, because of your failure, you tell this story about who you are and you're actually wiring yourself to fail more. You think like you deserve to get hit with a stick when you don't do what you should. Like I was definitely that way. When I started in business, like I just drove myself basically with anger and fear. And that was like 3 years in business of just like, I would go through burnout cycles, anger and fear, Grant Cardone, hustle porn, right? And that's what like did everything in my business. It was sales business, insurance. And then what I learned, dude, as I did some of this internal work is like, if I saw myself differently and I could forgive myself when I did have failures and say like, that doesn't mean anything about me as a person, like it's just what I did, then I got to kind of in a healthy way go back to who I was. And if I believe that who I am is someone who wants to, you know, do the work that I'm doing, wants to serve people, then even when I'm at my lowest, there's kind of a bare minimum that I can still show up and do. And so that's what I like to design around is like, all right, when you're at your worst, what's the bare minimum? What's the one step? And like, then when you revert back to your identity, we're all going to do that at some point. The identity says like, I still love doing this and I can do that bare minimum.
What does that process of reinventing your identity or reinventing the way that you look at yourself actually look like, right? For you, it was you operated from a place of fear, self-flagellation every single time that you failed. So what did that process of reinventing the way that you looked at yourself and changing that identity, that inner concentric circle, actually look like?
I'm going to be careful here to not sound prescriptive. It's going to be a bit different for anyone, right? For me, what it looked like is I really didn't love myself. So I worked with a coach who like called that out. They were an ADHD coach as well, ADHD business coach. And they're like, Zach, like, I really don't think that you love yourself, that you're showing up for yourself in this way. And I was kind of like, F you, like, of course I love myself, you know? But like, as I started to get into the work, like I totally saw that. I just saw that the way I was talking about myself, the way I was thinking about myself wasn't coming from a place of love. So for me, like that was the first step. I needed to be able to like look at who I was and love that person because then like there wasn't anything I was running away from. There was no fear there. There was nothing that like got pushed under the rug. I think one of the things about love is you can just see people fully and everything about them. Like there's nothing that isn't part of that picture, right? It's not like I love 3/4 of you and I don't love the other quarter. For me, that's what it looked like, was learning how to love myself. And then that got rid of a lot of the things that I didn't want to look at as a person. And then I could work on those things, right? That was the first step. And then there's a lot of other things you can do internal work wise from that place. But I do believe for pretty much everyone, you've got to start to be able to like love, accept, just fully see who you are first. And then you can get into that, right?
Yeah. And can be a pretty slow and brutal process, right? To kind of look at yourself in the mirror and hold yourself back from criticizing yourself. Because I've gone through this process where I reflect, I look back on the previous week, I look back on the previous month, at the end of the year, I look back at the previous year, and it's hard to look at the things where maybe the shortcomings, the things where I didn't do so well, right? The things that I'm struggling with, and not just be overly critical of yourself. How did you overcome that, right? How did you shift that reflection on yourself and looking at yourself in the mirror, and then just come to love and appreciate everything about yourself, and then see it almost more in like a productive way, right? Instead of just, again, continuing to flog yourself for the things that you're fucking up with. How did you kind of own that as an opportunity to improve or something like that?
Well, not to nitpick your language, but I don't think it's something you ever are going to overcome. This is something all of us are going to continue to have come up. You're never going to magically like reach this place of enlightenment, right? But what I do think you can do is you can start to reframe what you do when those judgments come up. And one of the questions I use when I work with people is like, let's say you don't perform in the way that you want to. What does that mean about you? So like if I work with clients, we'll set quarterly goals. And it's like, all right, so let's fast forward a quarter. Everybody likes to say like, all right, you're there. What does it feel like? Right? Which is a great question. And it's helpful. But I often like to start with like, all right, so let's say you shit the bed. 3 months from now, none of this stuff has happened. Like, tell me, Ian, what does that mean about you as a person? And I think if you like sit with that question, you answer it honestly, what you'll find is you'll find the beliefs that you have about yourself. You'll find your connection between doing and being. And I would just say like, for everyone, there's a balance of how much that serves you. I can just speak to my own experience. Like the more I'm able to detach my identity from how I perform, the more I'm able to kind of let go of some of those narratives, the better I perform. And the happier I am, the better my quality of life is. And so that's what I would say is like, you're going to be in that place, accept that you're going to be in that place. But then when it comes up, I would just sit with it and say like, wow, I'm feeling this. Like, let me get curious and understand my beliefs about myself. And you can do that before you're in the shitty place or during, like it's going to be a combination, but I would just expect it. Don't expect that you won't have judgmental thoughts, right? Like we're all founders. We all drive hard. Like we want the big things, right? You're going to think the thoughts, but just like get curious when they're there. Just a little piece here. I think a lot of times where people get into trouble is the secondary or the tertiary spiral. And what I mean is like you make an initial mistake. So in this case, it's like judging yourself, right? Then what you do is you worry about judging yourself. Then you go, oh shit, I shouldn't be judging myself. Let me fix that problem. You go into this whole other spiral, which is like all this wasted mental energy. I would instead encourage you, like, just expect that the first thing will come up, expect the judgments will come up, and then sit with them. And again, as an act of self-love, like sit with them and look to understand them. Sit with them and say like, that's so interesting. I didn't hit my sales targets and now I think I'm a piece of shit. Why do I feel like I'm a piece of shit when I don't hit my sales targets? Do I really believe that who I am is based on me hitting my sales numbers? And like, if you can get in the practice of going to that curiosity place, I really think it will help you let go of some of those narratives if you choose to.
100%. Being curious. And what I'm hearing too is almost when you are critiquing yourself so heavily for not achieving some outcome, it seems like you're just placing so much emphasis. Like, it almost feels like you might have the wrong scorecard for yourself. Not that you shouldn't want to go and achieve these things, hit that sales target, achieve some business goal. But when you're off track and you don't hit that, you spiral out and you're sad, right? You just get extremely sad. It doesn't seem like it's taking into the account the full picture of who you are as a person, as a human, right? There's other elements of your life than just your business objectives, right? There's so much more to life than just accomplishing the things in business. If that's your only scoreboard, if it's your only scoreboard of how you evaluate yourself and how you judge your performance and judge how you're doing as a person and judge yourself, then yeah, when you don't hit the sales target, you're obviously failing, right? You're not going to do good. But so it seems like a part of this reinvention of your identity, or how you evaluate your performance and evaluate yourself, which even sounds a little kind of strongly worded, is a result of a kind of having the wrong scoreboard for yourself. So is that something that you work with your clients to help them kind of create that new scoreboard for how they evaluate their life?
Yeah, I wouldn't take them there kind of directly, but I would say indirectly, when you let go of some of those other narratives, like you're going to start to see those things. Because the reality is, like, if you're evaluating your life that way, the other things are still important to you. You're just covering them up with like the urgency and how important you're telling yourself the business is. So once you kind of release some of that pressure, like you'll naturally see the other things. For example, like I believed that I had to make all these sacrifices in my life to like be successful in business early on. I was like, all right, like I'm not going to be dating for these 2 years. Like I'm just going to focus and on and on and on, like my own happiness on the chopping block every time. I didn't really have to intentionally like say, okay, let me make these other aspects like important. All I needed to do was let go of some of the narratives I had around business. And I think one of the, you want to call it like a mantra or a belief that's really helped me is like, I'm not that important. And that's a beautiful thing. So I will tell myself that a lot, because it's like almost every time I'm freaking out and I have a lot of pressure, there's this underlying belief that there's this like grand purpose to all the stuff that I'm doing, which, like, you know, not to get too philosophical on you, but like we are small pieces of the world.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, no one else really knows if you do or don't hit your sales targets. Yeah. You're the one who brings all that pressure in. And so I think it's a beautiful thing to recognize that, like, yeah, the work you do has impact, but it's not going to change really that much in the scope of life. And all it's really impacting is your level of happiness. And so if you can recognize that, like, it's not that important, it'll just really let you go, like, dude, I missed it that last quarter. It is what it is. Like, what do I need to do to hit it next quarter?
Yeah, that's definitely a much more productive lens. And there's a few quotes from Naval Ravikant that sparked or came to mind when you were, Naval's the man, right? Like the one big one that came to mind is, you're just a firefly in the blink of the night, right? That's the full scope of our life span, right? Is our life is just a firefly in the blink of the night in the grand scope of the universe, right? Which is getting very philosophical. And then another one is towards the direction of not taking yourself too seriously, right? You're just a monkey with a plan, just trying to figure it out, right? Just give yourself a little grace and just don't take yourself too seriously, right? That's a big one. And I think for me, how I try and ground myself in that, it's always going to get caught up in stuff, right? And start taking myself really seriously and think I'm some hotshot. And then, the rug gets pulled out from under me and I crash back down to reality. And I try and bring myself back, like embracing death. Again, this is getting really deep, which I love, but embracing death has been a really helpful in that process for me of not taking myself so seriously. And then also just placing the things that are happening, the circumstances that I'm experiencing in the right context of like, okay, really, how big of a deal is this? It's really not. Like, remember that you will die. I try and ground myself in that reality, and that helps place the circumstances that I'm experiencing in my life in the right context. So a lot of the common advice that's out there is all about just the frontline systems and actions and behaviors and the things that you should do, right? Like you should journal, you should meditate, you should, do these things every day. But if you don't have that grounded and do the hard work of adjusting the way that you perceive yourself as a person, right? And how you love yourself, then those frontline systems, whatever works best for you, are just kind of pointless. They're not as valuable. They're not as useful, right? Like I think for me, like the frontline practices that work great for me, like I do journal, I do meditate. Like meditation is like one of my keystone habits. And I find that through practicing meditation, I've been able to get a lot better at noticing when my brain is just running on autopilot and just spiraling, right? Like I can acknowledge my thoughts, recognize when they're there, acknowledge that it's just a thought, right? And then as soon as you kind of catch the thought, it kind of dissipates. But is there something there that I'm just not quite articulating, which is you still need frontline systems. Like you're not denying the value of having those kind of systems and those habits and those routines that you do, but you need to ground it in that foundational work of reinventing how you look at yourself. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't love the word need. Sorry, I'm nitpicking
Yeah.
language again. I
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
love the word need because you don't need to do
Yeah.
anything, right? You can do
Right.
whatever you want. You can go attack all the habits. You can read Atomic Habits and you can set up this beautiful world of habits, and like more power to you. What I would maybe offer is if you do that, you will someday wake up and they will feel like a ton of work. They will feel just like, wow, I have this huge list of homework. And dude, I'm lazy. Like I build my life to try to have the least amount of mental load possible because I believe the value that I give to people is really based on the quality of how I can show up for people. And the more load I put on that, like it's got to come from somewhere, right? It's a zero-sum game. The way I would phrase it is like it's a game of alignment. And the more you can be aligned in those outside circles with what's on the inside, the less work it's going to be. Decision making. When I was just a business coach, I was a business coach for a startup for a while. Like people would come to me with these really major decisions in their business. Like, do I hire, fire here? What do I do? And I've always been fairly good at that. And I think the reason that I'm able to help people in that way or make those decisions in my business is I always just come from like who I am and then what's the natural extension of that. So like if you were asking me for advice on how do I make this decision or how do I build a habit that like supports me in this way, I'm going to start with who you are, not with what's the best system of habits, which I think is very easy to get caught up in our world, right? Optimize everything, biohack everything. Everything is optimal, right? And it's like, it's optimal to the extent that it is an extension of you. If you're someone who's not a morning person, doing the 5 a.m. morning thing where you have this magic morning, you do the Tony Robbins magic morning thing. If you're not a morning person, you may make it 2 months on willpower, but at some point you're going to wake up and be like, this is fucking dumb. And so I just think that like having awareness of who you are, that then extends out to the outer circles and you build based on who you are. And if who you are doesn't extend naturally to those circles, then like maybe you're in the wrong space or maybe it would serve you to spend some time and adjust that because you can adjust that. I just see a lot, particularly in business and particularly with ADHD, of people think that things are supposed to function a certain way. And oftentimes, like as a high performer, you can fit into a lot of boxes, right? You can tell yourself that all these things are fits and that like you can do them. And I've done that and I'm sure you've done that. But the thing is like at some point, you're just going to wake up exhausted. And I've done that for years. And so that's what I would say is like, if you're listening to this and you feel that way, just start over and start from a place of like I do an exercise with my people. It's called, what do I want? It will be painful. It's 30 minutes of you just ask yourself or do it with a partner. What do I want? The only rules are you can't repeat yourself and you have to answer the question. And what you're going to find is like what's true to you and where you want to go. And then build based on that. And there's no like wrong answers. Yeah. I just think a lot of times people like pull in other wants that are like in sales, this happens all the time where like you'll take someone else's target and you're like, oh yeah, I need to have a 25 grand month because this other dude does. Well, does that actually serve you? Like, is that actually relevant to your life? Because otherwise you're going to do all these things. And then at some point you're going to wake up and completely want to spit all of it out of your mouth.
Oh, it totally makes sense. Yeah. The process of adopting other people's goals and beliefs, but goals for yourself or beliefs that other people have about what they want for yourself makes a lot of sense, like why it happens, right? Because doing that work, right, that exercise, that 30-minute exercise is not easy. And that's just the start, right? But figuring out what you actually want in life is one of the hardest questions to answer. Like it's something that, everybody's in pursuit of. Everybody's told from a young age, just find the thing that you love to do, just do what you want to do. Everybody says it, but it's really hard to find that. Like Paul Graham has a series of essays that are amazing, and one of them is How to Do What You Love. And in that essay, there's a point that stuck with me, and I bring it up all the time. Out of the last 100 years of the billions of people that existed, maybe a couple 100,000 people maybe have truly ever found and discovered what it is that they love to do, right? But when you do find that, everything in life just becomes so much easier. Like that discovery process is really complicated. It is really messy, and having somebody like you to kind of facilitate that process with you is so helpful. But it just seems like anybody who's achieved a level of success in life, and that's not like financial success, but it's more like fulfillment, happiness, done the things that they wanted to do. It kind of all started with just becoming who it is that they wanted to become. And that starts with discovering and figuring out a rough idea, at least, of what that is, so you can start taking the meaningful steps in that direction. So you shared that exercise. Once they've gone through that exercise, kind of what are those next steps that you typically take your clients through? Like, okay, you've done the 30 minutes of asking yourself, what do you want? Brain dumping everything out on paper. You have a rough idea of what that ideal future state looks like for you. And what's the next step? Like, what do they do once they have an idea of what it is that they want? How should they kind of use that information?
So the way I use it is I never want to come from a place as a coach of like telling someone what they should do. I don't know. You are the one who knows. You're the one who knows where you want to go. And my job is just to like make that easier, less bumpy. Because of that, like I want them to have North Stars that are very grounded in who they are and what they want. So that's where I start is like, what do you want? We get that mess like you're talking about. And then I'll just have them go sit with that, right? Sit with like, all right, what are the common threads that come up in that? What do you see yourself going back to? Because what you're going to find is probably like, I mean, depending on how much you've done this work, done internal work, but like maybe half to 2/3 of what you are going to spit out is like not yours. It's not true to you. And so like you really need to sit and discern. And just because it's like a feeling that you had doesn't mean that like it's true to you. Sometimes I think something that gets confused in the like self-development space is this like trust your feelings thing. Like your feelings are important and you should pay attention to them. It would serve you to pay attention to them. There's often truth there. It doesn't mean that if you feel or experience something that is coming from you, right? It doesn't mean that represents you in any way. And so a lot of times the game is like feel the feeling, look at it with curiosity again, and then say like, this isn't me. And so that's a lot of the what do you want is like, all right, recognize what's true to you. Typically the things you consistently go back to, those are going to be more true to you. And then what I do is like boil it down to like 2 or 3 North Stars, set a time constraint with them. People work well with time constraints, particularly neurodivergence, but anyone. For neurodivergence, just real quickly, your brains are attached to different things. One of those things is urgency. So if you can have like a sense of danger or urgency attached to something that you do, your brain will actually recognize that thing as a real thing. And then I like to take it to some sort of daily written practice. And the reason for that is like we talked about the identity thing, right? Well, where is your identity? Your identity is your subconscious, really. So the way I explain it, and this is neuroscientists can correct me, but like roughly 90% of your function as a person is subconscious. So people talk about like the brain capacity you have that you don't use. Like that's kind of BS. Like you are using it, but you're not using it in a way where like you'll see it. You're using it behind the scenes with your subconscious. That's the real horsepower in your head. And so anything you can do to like speak to your subconscious is going to be so much easier to create identity change, right? Because that's who you are. And so a great way to access that is writing. What I would suggest is writing is a great way to cause friction because people hate doing it. Particularly like founders who move a lot, like they hate writing things every day. I hated writing things every day. And so what you're going to do is like those North Stars, attach them to a feeling of not what will you feel when this is true because it's true, but it's more what will you feel when this is true because of who you are to do those things. Does that difference make sense?
Yeah.
So like if you're saying sales target, right? It's like, all right, have you hit that sales target before? Well, no. All right. Well, what's the version of you that would hit that sales target? Think about that. How does that person behave? How does that person think? So assuming you are that person for the next 3 months to hit those sales targets, what does that now feel like? And that feeling is what you write down every day. So I feel blank because, and then whatever the North Star is. So you're going to have like a list of somewhere like 2 to I would say max 4 or 5 of those. And I would write them down every day forever, whatever the period is that you're driving. But the purpose is that's painful. It's friction. And I love friction because what it does is it pushes out the things that are not true to you. So like if you have someone else's goal and you're writing it down every day, you're going to maybe last like 2 weeks to a month with that. And you're going to be like, dude, this is fucking stupid. And what you'll think is like the exercise is stupid. But actually what it is like, no, that statement, that thing that you thought you wanted doesn't actually represent you. Because the reality is like, if that thing is something you want, one of mine that I wrote down for a really long time is who is the person that I want to be with for the rest of my life? Who do I want to marry? I never get tired of writing down who that person is. Why? Because that's critical to like the life that I know I want. I don't even see the friction after I start moving on it. But like if that was some sales target that I don't care about, again, I'd maybe go a month and then I would really feel the friction. And that's when I would know like, all right, well, it's not true to me. So point being, like, it doesn't have to be that system, but from that mess, boil out a few things that you believe are true to you, and then do something with those that's going to cause friction. Write them down either morning and evening until you're like, dude, I can't write these anymore. Or I've started to weed out whatever is not true to me. And if you can write something down like for 3 months or whatever the target frame is, that is true to you. And that is a representation of something that you truly want in life. So you said it's a difficult thing. It is a difficult thing. The reason to know what you want is so difficult is because it requires this like kneading of the dough almost to find out like what's actually true and what's not.
Yeah. And just a lot of trial and error, right? Like you have this expectation of the things that you think that you want, and then you go through that exercise, you go through that process, you realize, 2 months later, 3 months later, it's like, oh, I actually don't want that. So now we got to go back to the drawing board, try and, okay, now with this new information, we can readjust the expectation, the things that I said that I want. And then obviously it takes a lot of hard work to go out and
you
make
can
that a
either
reality.
figure that out with friction on the front end, or you can figure it out by going out and achieving the thing and then still being miserable, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, pick your poison.
For sure. I love it. Thanks for sharing that. You talk about failure not as an objective event, but as a narrative that a lot of founders place on themselves. And that idea stood out to me because myself personally carry a lot of old failures, and I'm sure other operators out there carry a lot of old failures into every new decision that they make or every day of their life. So how do you see the story that someone tells themselves about failure shape the way that they build and approach, their everyday life and this new business and these new things that they're attempting to go out and do?
So how would you define failure?
Kind of in a long definition is like, okay, you set out to do something and you didn't achieve it. Like, I think it's definitely more outcome oriented for me.
The last failure you had, Ian, that really kind of stuck with you, that was tough to let go, what was that for you? Let's take sales. The last sales call you had that didn't go the way you wanted. Did that stick with you? Was that difficult for you to move on with your business?
Last week went Monday. I pitched the biggest project that I would have had with this new business. It was a $20,000 project, and it didn't go through, right? It just like wasn't the right time for them. I saw the way that the conversation ended. I knew that there was some way to get some kind of deal done, but I just kind of like let it fall off, and it didn't convert.
So Ian, when you don't get what you want like that, what does that mean about you?
I guess the things that's coming to my mind is like, okay, I have a long way to grow as it relates to sales, like that, and then in the other category, right? Like I have a long way to grow, ways that I can get better at selling.
You're polishing. What's maybe the narrative you say before you polish?
Oh, I suck at sales, I guess. Like I suck at sales. Yeah.
So here's the other thing is like, when you're doing subconscious work, you can't be afraid of what's in the dark. You can't be afraid of like the real rawest form of things. And I think one of maybe my strengths as a coach is I have a pretty good sense for when people are like not looking at the real thing, because your subconscious knows things deeply. And so like if you and I were going out to work on this belief, right? There's a book on beliefs that I really like. It's called The 4 Agreements. Have you ever read that?
Yep.
I love the 4 Agreements because it talks about the way beliefs sap our energy, right? It's like a light that's on in your house. And so when you have this belief around failure is like death and taxes, right? It's something that's guaranteed that we'll experience. Almost by extension, the way we look at our failure is going to be how we behave in business or anywhere else where we're trying to grow. Because if you define it the way you did, right? That means that anywhere where you're looking to grow, you're going to experience a lot of failure. And if you then have this belief attached to it, which is like, when I fail, I am somehow less than. I am somehow less of the person that I thought that I was, or it hurts the way that I see myself, then what you're going to find is like you have this whole loop of babying yourself to get you back to this place of functionality after you have this failure. So one of the things that I find is helpful there is you just look at it like any other belief. It's like, all right, I had this failure. What does that mean about me as a person? You identify the belief. So for you, it might be like, I suck at sales. We could even do a little bit more digging there. And I would bet there's even a clearer, I'm not this thing that I think I should be. If you and I were like on a one-on-one, really digging into it. Like there's this
Yeah.
expectation that you have for yourself, and it's like, I am not that when I experience failure. Then it's just a question of like, all right, well, let's take that as a belief. Do you want a t-shirt that says that? Like, would you want to proclaim that to the world? Like, do you want that to be who you are? It's like, well, probably not, right? And so then it's like, okay, well, if we can agree that it doesn't serve you, then it's like, well, how do we let it go? And this is, I think, the real question when you get into internal work. It's like you find something you don't love, find something that you don't really want to be part of you or your life. It's now like, what the f- do I do with this? And for me, what I would say is you look at it in a loving way until it's not there anymore. And just like in meditation, like the way you described it, I would describe it the exact same. But that process is the same for anything that doesn't serve you anymore.
But I think for me, this belief that I suck at sales, right? And then just look at, or we could go even deeper, look at it in the sun, hold it out into the light and be like, okay, what is this actually, right? And like, is this something that is a fundamental truth about me that is completely unchanging, like unchangeable? Like absolutely not, right? You just kind of like discredit that belief as something that's just a narrative that I'm telling myself.
You don't want anything with like a negative connotation, right? You don't
Okay.
want anything where you diminish or minimize the belief. Like the belief is a part of you. So you just love it like you love yourself. But just because you love someone doesn't mean you want them in your life every day. We all have a toxic aunt, uncle, friend where it's like, dude, like you can love that person, but it doesn't mean I'm inviting you to my birthday party. It doesn't mean I'm having you over to hang out every day. Why? Because like it doesn't serve me to have you in proximity to me. I love you no less. I would really encourage, like for anyone watching this, when you find something that you don't like about yourself, challenge yourself to love that the same way you love all of the rest of you. Because when you love something like that, it gets rid of the fear, it gets rid of the hatred, and those are the things that actually cause us to latch onto things. That's why I talked about things being in the darkness, right? When you're not afraid of that anymore, when you can see the whole you, then it's like, dude, I love that and I'm going to let it go. And it doesn't serve me. Here's how I work on a belief to get a little bit more practical for you. So we find the belief and then it's like, okay, where in the past, I play the past, present, future game. Where in the past has this served me, not served me? Where in the present, where in the future? Just make it really viscerally clear how this thing doesn't serve you. And then you're just going to bring more visibility and light to it. So it's like every time it pops up, you're going back through. Okay, this is why journaling's helpful. Just noticed that I failed. I just noticed that I felt this way. This is a pattern. This is a belief that I've recognized. I'm noticing it. And that's really it. Like you just keep noticing it. And this is the beautiful thing about alignment is we all want to be like in full alignment with ourselves. And so when we see these things that like are not quite who we want to be and we keep bringing light to them, there will actually be a point where you just let it go. Yeah. And if you haven't experienced this before, like it seems oversimplified. You're like, no, give me the pathway, give me the steps to like see the belief and let go of it. And I'm telling you, letting go of it is not the skill. Letting go of it is actually not the difficult part. What is difficult is seeing it with enough clarity that you're ready to. That minimizing, that like, oh, that was such a stupid thought, or like, oh, I should be well beyond this, comes up for me a lot still when I'm doing internal work. It's like, dude, I shouldn't be dealing with this. Like, I'm beyond this. This pride around who I should be. That will hold me back from being able to let go of whatever the thing is. It serves me to look at it and just say like, oh, well, this is part of me. It's coming up. It's a belief that I'm holding on to. That's so interesting. That's so silly.
Yeah. It's just the exposure to it and acknowledging it frequently enough. And I think there's something to, if you find a solution that's analogous to some solution that nature has created, you're on to something. You're onto something there with like, if you find something like capitalism is a form of government that is very analogous to just natural selection and evolution, right? So I think like we're onto something when it comes to capitalism as a form of governance. But like what you're talking about is almost like an exposure therapy. I'm thinking that your solution is analogous to, in nature, the more you're exposed to some kind of threat or bad thing, toxin, let's say, the less power it has and the more effectively you'll be able to confront it, own it, and move through it, if that makes sense. So the way that I'm interpreting what you're sharing is the more you can just kind of acknowledge this thing and come to like love this thing about yourself, the less fear you're going to have of it. And the more likely it's going to be that you're going to be able to confront it. Like for me, like if I just think about, journal about, acknowledge the fact that of this belief that I have about myself that I suck at sales, the less power it's going to have over me, the less I'm going to fear that element of myself. And the more I'll be able to just kind of like own it and take more productive actions to get better at it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I would say like meditation is that exposure therapy. Any form of stillness you create for yourself, if you are truly creating stillness, will be exposure therapy to all of these feelings and beliefs and everything that your subconscious like pulls in.
For me, in my anecdotal experience with meditation, over the last few years, it just, the thoughts have just lost so much control, I guess, or like so much power. I just see thoughts more for what they are, and I'm able to explore them. I use Sam Harris's Waking Up app, and one of the practices that he guides you through every now and then in the daily meditations is investigating emotions. And like the more that you just look at the emotion and try and feel the emotion as hard as you can, the half-life of that emotion is much shorter. Like they just last so much shorter. So I feel like that's kind of the ability, I guess, that meditation and that practice has granted me. A lot of founders and people, when they're building a business, they end up building a business that they hate. So a lot of founders, right, they technically succeed, they build a successful business, but when they get to that point where they thought they dreamed of their whole life, they resent the business that they built, right? They actually hate it. The cost was everything else, right? Their energy, their relationships, their sense of self. So from your journey and your work with your clients, what actually causes that resentment of the business or the thing that they built? And how can founders design businesses that actually support who they are becoming instead of who they're forcing themselves to be?
It's interesting, right? Because I see it as the exact same discussion that we were just on with habits. Your business is an extension of you. And I'll share how I've built incorrectly. So the first 5 to 7 years that I was in business, I built based on what the business needed. I talk a lot about external and internal constraints. What's our external constraint? We don't have enough leads. Like we're converting well, we don't have the leads. What do we need to do to get the leads so that the machine can increase? That thinking is not incorrect, right? That is how you solve external constraints in a business. It has a place. But when you make all of your decisions from this standpoint of solving the next external constraint so that you can get to the next size, so that you can find the next constraint so that you can get to the next size, what you'll find is you just build a machine that goes as far as it can go. And then at some point something breaks and you either get someone else or you become the person who can fix it, right? It's also like this. Have you ever heard the saying people get promoted to their level of incompetence? So the reason for that is because when people promote you, it's based on what? How well you did at the position before. It's not based on, do you have the skills and will you be fulfilled in doing the work at the next level? So what happens is you promote because people crushed it at the level they were at. And at some point they'll get to this level where they're like, dude, I hate this work, or I don't have the skills required to do this work. Business, I see, is much the same thing. So you can build this business where you solve the external constraints and you just see that as the life that you live, right? You do what you need to do to solve the next external constraint. And I have a mentor who works with me. One of the things he's really helped me with is dude, do you want growth? What would growth mean? What would that feel like? Where's the growth coming from? It's been the coolest thing, Ian. I've kind of shared that perspective with people where right now I'm in a period where I'm not taking another cohort of people into the group. I'm putting people on waiting lists. And I'm not taking more money. I'm not taking new clients because I really want to focus on who I have, build the pathway. And then when I'm ready for the next cohort, I'll open it up and we'll take those people. Why? Because what I don't want is to wake up in the morning and have more people that I need to put things into in order for them to be successful and have a good experience in the program, have more people than I have what's in the cup to give them. So what I would rather have is just be overflowing all the time. And then when I recognize that okay, growth is something I can handle and that feels good in the business, then we grow. And so growth becomes this almost nozzle that you control based on what's the day-to-day experience you want as a business owner. I'm not smart enough to have figured that out on my own. I absolutely would have continued to make that mistake if this guy hadn't like shared that with me, because that was his experience building businesses as well. And so I would just say, like, when you make decisions, particularly around growth in your business, but really about anything, what I now find is a very helpful North Star is like, what is the day-to-day experience that I want to have? And how would this decision relate to that? It's like, all right, I want to bring on a CMO. Okay, cool. I bring on the CMO. Well, now we're going to need to grow 30% in the next 6 months. Otherwise, like what I'm paying him, his base, isn't really going to make sense financially.
Yeah.
Okay. What would 30% growth look like in this business? And what would that look like as a day-to-day experience? And what that may lead you to is like, oh, well, actually, we're kind of chilling right now and a CMO would be cool, but I would rather hang out, grow at 10% over the next 6 months. And then when I feel like I really need the CMO, I'll add them. Because if you just function off external constraints, it's like, all right, well, the next piece to go in is the CMO. We do that. That creates a new set of problems. And then we just go solve those. That may be aligned, right? There's nothing wrong with that. It would serve you to look at and say like, okay, this next experience, this next day to day, is that in alignment with whoever is involved in the business, the experience that they want to be having?
I think the default operating system is just grow it as big as possible, as fast as possible, and just do whatever it takes to accomplish that objective without ever taking that question that I love of what is the day-to-day lifestyle that you want to live. Shahil Bloom in The 5 Types of Wealth talked about like when you're setting your goals that you have for yourself or those North Stars, it's just like, what do you want your life to look like on a random Tuesday? Like, what do you want a random Tuesday in your life to look like, right? And then build to that. Don't just adopt this default objective of as big as possible, as fast as possible, right? Because then it's just you're on the never-ending hamster wheel of solving those external constraints. And I think the way that you laid it out was really eloquent. And I think if I had to summarize it, is just include that into the equation of what is the day-to-day experience. Maybe that is like the whole equation. It's like, okay, what is the day-to-day experience that you want to live? And again, that comes from, you can only confidently define that once you've done that internal work of building those concentric circles of starting with your identity, asking yourself what are the things that you want, right? And then you can kind of define what that day-to-day experience that you're building for looks like. And then now you have that filter of, okay, we have this external constraint that we could solve. Would solving it completely sacrifice this thing that we're actually optimizing or building for, which is that day-to-day lifestyle that I and the people on our team want to live. That's amazing. Did I kind of summarize that accurately?
Yeah, Naval actually has a really good quote for this. Do you know his retirement quote?
I don't know his exact quote now.
So his quote is essentially like, retirement is when you stop sacrificing today for an imaginary tomorrow.
Yes, I do remember
I think that fits pretty well with the conversation.
100%. Retirement is the day you stop sacrificing today for some imaginary tomorrow. So within the info product space, so the big problem that I have stumbled across came from my own personal experience, and it was actually with the 5 Types of Wealth. I've always been a voracious reader. I take notes, highlight, bend page corners. When I buy a course, I watch all the videos, take notes, show up to all the group calls, everything. But what I always struggled with was doing the work that was assigned to me in those books. How do you close what I call the client execution gap, where you get the clients to do the work that you're assigning to them in the program?
I would be the first person to tell you, like, I don't think I've fully solved this, right? Like, I think it's something you learn more about as you grow as a practitioner, and I am still very much a baby in the space. So I'll go back to our failure conversation real quick, because I see failure and resistance very closely together. The way I would define failure is like when you have something that is true to you that you're pursuing, that you end up letting go of because you no longer believe that you're the person who can get to that place. So that's how I would define a failure. If I want to ask the girl out and I know the girl would be right for me and I go out and ask her out, it's not when she shuts me down. It's like, did I ever get to a place where I just stop pursuing the people I'm interested in because I have this narrative about myself? That's failure. Whoever adopt a belief, right, that you are not the person and that you can't get to that place, that's what I would see as failure. And I see the same thing with resistance. Like, resistance is very much going to just be part of the path. We're all going to have resistance as we go. And I strive every day to get rid of resistance in like the things that I give people. Like, as you can imagine, working with people who are exclusively ADHD, you get a ton of just like, yeah, I have no idea what happened to the homework we talked about last week. Like, here I am, let's go party, right? And that's fine. Like, that's fun. I like that environment. But what I've found to be helpful, I would say broad strokes, is going back to what's important to the person. And this is why I think I've developed something where you start so much with what's important to you and where you want to go and why is that important. Because then, and I see client management the same way. We could do a whole client management thing off this. But like when you get a behavior that you don't want, that's the outside circle. So it's like, all right, you didn't go in and do the coursework. You didn't go do the thing from the book that you wanted to do. All right, what's the internal piece that wasn't in alignment? Because my belief is like once it is in alignment, not over every day, every time, but over the long term, you will come back to alignment with those beliefs and who you see yourself as being. So if you're reading a book and it's like you see an exercise and you're like, that would be really nice. That's not an exercise that you're going to go out and do. Why? Because like you don't see it as essential to who you are and where you're going. But if you read it and like you sit with it and it's like, dude, I really feel that if I did this, I would see this meaningful change in my life. If someone gets to that place, then it's really easy for a coach or someone else to like help iron out some of the bumps on the way and just have them keep coming back to the table. Because they'll still have resistance. They'll still have non-compliance towards that thing. But the thing is like, will you come back? And that's why I brought up the failure. Will you come back? Will you try it again? And so like, yeah, dude, I have a ton of trouble like getting people to like go through the course module that I assign them. But it's like, well, what I can do is come back to why was it important that we talked about the course module? And why is that important to a North Star that you and I set, which was based on something you know is important to you. Since that's all embedded in bedrock, I can just run back along that line till I find something that's solid. And then we just keep going from there. So I much more see it as a game of like, how do you get the right behaviors every time? Or how do you get people to come in and absorb all the material? And it's just like, as a practitioner, how can you just like smile and forgive and not be upset about it, expect it, and still be grounded in things for the person that they want to come back and do the work? And then I think at a smaller level, like for ADHD in particular, it's important for me to understand like, where are they getting the most resistance? Like where is what I'm assigning or what we're working on not the thing that their brain is going to mesh well with? And then there's always some bumps that you can iron out there. Like when I first wrote my course, it was a monster. It was 700 pages of content, literally.
Wow.
And I looked at it and I was like, I work with ADHD people. Like I'm an idiot. Why did I do this? Then I went through like 6 months of paring that sucker down. How do I get the essentials, but like get rid of reading friction so that it's easier for those people to come back and do the work? I think it is this game of like, how do you ground in what's real to the person and what's meaningful to the person? And also like, as you see resistance and bumps, get curious about those and say like, is there something we can do at maybe a systems level or a way we support people to help iron out some of that friction? And that also is important, right? Getting rid of the mental load and the friction of doing something that you know is aligned is also part of that equation.
Well said. You ensure that the work that you're assigning to them is within alignment of the bedrock and the foundation that you have kind of defined with them. So it like means it's meaningful for them to do the work, right? It's something that they know that they want to do. And then you, as the creator, iron out as much of that resistance as possible because it's inevitable, right? No matter what you do, even if you did the work for them, right? There's going to be some resistance involved in that process, right? There's always going to be a little bit of resistance, but with that alignment comes the energy needed to overcome that resistance and do any kind of work. As an info product creator, you know that the people that you bring into your program, into your course, they're only going to get the value if they take action and do the work that you assign to them. So you kind of need to create some friction up front and gain the commitment of those people. And before they come in, like you need to make sure that this is going to be the kind of person that's going to do the work, right? And they're going to get the value. So you need to kind of create some of that upfront friction on who you allow into the community. That's the only other like big insight that I found from people that I would want to list here as well. On top of what you said. That's a great point.
The way I would say that is like client management begins in your sales process. So shaping for the client who will do well in your program. Like when I'm selling, I don't look for who I can sell. I look for who's going to come in and see success with me. And I think if you shape that way, like to your point, if you start intentionally looking for and shaping those behaviors as you're in the sales process, then it's just an extension once they've paid you and they're inside.
And my work focuses on building off of all of that, right? None of that is going to ever go away. Like that is all going to be incredibly important no matter what. My work, the way that you phrased it, and I'm definitely going to steal this, is in helping the creator iron out some of the friction that exists within their program, right? And the way that I do that is I build these custom models that are trained on that info product creator's program, and like their unique expertise is captured in the model. And then we create like guided step-by-step experiences with generative AI that guide people through completing the work and the tasks that you assign to them. Like the example, like how I kind of discovered this use case was when I was reading The 5 Types of Wealth by Shahil Bloom. It was very much in alignment with me in like that point of time in my life. Like I was exiting my first business, getting ready to start this next business. I had no idea what it is that I wanted to do. I had like some rough ideas, but like that first exercise that he assigns to you in the book is your ikigai. Going through the process of uncovering what your ikigai is, right? The overlap of what you love, what you're good at, and what the world needs. And that's kind of where he leaves it in the book, right? He leaves you with a couple prompts and things, questions that you can explore and chew on. In the book, he's like, okay, now go find your ikigai. Here are a couple prompts that you can answer. I'm like, like, okay, that's kind of tough. So I built like this custom model that was trained on everything about the book. And then like one of the protocols that I call them guided me through that reflective discovery process of uncovering what my ikigai was. And in going through that process, it led me to doing exactly what I'm doing today. Like this business is a result of me going through that exercise of finding what my ikigai was. And like that's just one example of one of the tasks in that book or one of the exercises. So that's kind of where I focus. But your answer is 90%.
Like I think that's what butchers info products, right? Is that resistance. It's people coming in and getting killed by the resistance. So I think it's such a huge need.
I appreciate it. Thanks. That's what we're working on. But if you had a giant billboard that everyone in the world could see for 10 seconds, what would it say?
I think mine would be around love yourself, you're not that important. Or like love and forgive yourself, you're not that important. Getting to the idea that if you can let the pressure off, like you'll really enjoy your life more and you'll love people more deeply. It's not that important. You're not that important. Just love yourself and love people. It will just make your life and the lives of the people around you so much better.
Well said. Zach, thank you so much for your time today.
Really appreciate it, Ian. Thanks for having me.
And that does it for my conversation with Zach Price. Here are my 3 main takeaways from the conversation. Number 1, identity drives execution. When things break, you do not fall back on your systems. You fall back on how you see yourself. So strengthening self-trust creates more consistent follow-through than any new habit or adding any new habits ever could. Number 2, failure is not the event. It is the meaning you attach to it. The real danger is adopting a belief about who you are after you miss or make a mistake. And the path forward is noticing those beliefs with curiosity and love until they lose their grip. Number 3, scale should be designed around the day-to-day life that you want. If you only solve external constraints, you can build a machine that grows while your quality of life collapses. So use your desired Tuesday, as Shahil Bloom would describe it, as a filter for your growth decisions and what you're striving for. Like, what does scale actually look like for you? Or what is the desired outcome? Might be a better word to use. If you want to get connected with Zach or learn more about his Impulse to Impact program, you can find his links in the description of this episode. And if you're an author, course creator, consultant, or coach and want to close the client execution gap in order to increase your impact and client retention of your program, download the free Program Execution Engine Toolkit at the link in the description. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.